necessary, and beating Gen.G, that's 100% the best way to do it.
And with a 2-0, if they can take it in this game, that's 2 extra points. And Afrika are really mad watching this draft, I think. They're really mad watching this series right now.
They're like, how dare you, Gen.G? Especially if Gen.G turns around and smacks them with like much better drafting at the end of the week.
Exactly.
As well. Like, oh no.
That's the thing. Like, it's like, oh, Gen.G, were you going to play Youngjae against this team in particular, and also not, you're just going to ignore the Aurelia in the first game as well? Like, against this team? Like, couldn't you have done this against anyone else? But sadly, that's just where the chips fall for Week 7 here. And looking at the drafts, like, Gen.G have an opportunity to really pull this off, but it's going to rely so much on Youngjae. I think the Olaf argument in this case is good for the Orianna. You know, the draft kind of came together around it, but he's not going to have any extra pressure to put onto this Renekton lane not very well against a Gwen who's super mobile. So it's kind of like farming Olaf in this game, and maybe he needs to really commit to these early objectives. If he can get an early lead that way,
yep,
he could end up having a great game here. But we saw in the last game he's not exactly the most proactive player early on, even with the Lee Sin.
I think so much is going to come down to B2D as well, and these shockwaves and whether they can land, because the pile-in from LiivSANDBOX is really scary, right?
Yeah.
But they will be close range, and they will be closely knit together in order to make this composition work as effectively as possible. So B2D should have some opportunities to get some fantastic ults off this game.
3-0 on the Orianna. He's only played it 3 times, but he's got that perfect win rate.
Yep. Of course, B2D, when it comes to control mages, he's definitely very, very good. So certainly looking a little bit more like his wheelhouse, but he was on Rise last time, so it should have been okay there too.
Look at these numbers too for LiivSANDBOX. Summit's first time playing the Gwen. It's not a champion he's really focused on. That's insane considering how high prio she's been and how often she's been open. And also Effort's first time on the Nautilus this season.
That is crazy as he's flashing forward already. Ruler has to flash out, but they're still going for this. The Ren's going to be there, and Prince and Effort 2v2 kill them as soon as they hit 2.
Yeah, Effort's like, this wasn't even my final form until I got the Nautilus, and
yeah,
now
exactly.
he's just in here flashing forward and winning the game.
Can we have Effort's stats? I hope that the stats team can bring up Effort's Nautilus stats.
I'm sure they will.
He's played this champion so many times.
It's one of the most famous champions he's played, and even me coming into this season, that's why we're looking for Khan instead.
Oh no!
Oh, so sad. That number might go down after this one if the things continue.
This is not the one we were looking for.
But like,
however, his stats very good as well. Nice work, Live.
When I came in first casting, I watched Effort a lot before I became an LCK commentator. But I knew his Nautilus was very famous. But then, in the beginning of this year, it was just so consistent. Like, it was very easily his most successful champion. It was target banned against him a lot. And then going into a series like this, like when that's your final pick, you know, it does raise questions about, like, where did LiivSANDBOX draft have any weakness, you know, in the lead up? They got everything they wanted.
And their drafts all day, right? Like in the first game and in this game, things are working out. It is still very early days, right? A 2v2 kill is absolutely fantastic. So we're going to have a look at this. Flash forward once again.
I didn't hear what you said, but I don't think it matters.
바텀 봐줄 필요 없어. 봐줄 필요 없어. 바로스 노플.
I think
also calling
해,
based his flash. And no heal, no flash. So it's like, yep, he's no heal, no flash. I got him. Easy peasy. And this actually really opens up the bottom side of the map so much for LiivSANDBOX. But it's already a pretty good matchup for the Kalista. But now you have a flashless Varus, so if they don't know where Krakow is, it's scary. This is a really hard matchup for Renekton, by the way.
Not a great one. Rascal is one of these Renektons where we often just trusted him anyway, right? No matter what sort of state the Crocodile was in, just because he's always been so confident. But as we can see, Summit's having a really good day today, and he's got another good matchup in the top side of the map. So this is, once again, dangerous for Gen.G.
It's just so frustrating because Renekton's sustain has been nerfed so many times, whereas Gwen is still highly sustainable. She went for the Doran's Blade start, you know, as you do, and is going to eventually get that Leeching Leer, and so you don't really get to trade, unfortunately, as the Renekton in this matchup, and it's a losing war of attrition. You can see the pings coming down for Youngjae, but he's an Olaf. He doesn't have great lockdown, so as long as the respectful positioning is there for Summit, he should be able to get out of pretty much any situation with an Olaf ganking.
Yeah, and also the Harrowing Mist is actually very, very useful against Olaf. He likes to start things off with an undertow.
Exactly.
And you can immune that pretty comfortably. with just putting some miss down. So you could imagine that Summit's probably pretty happy in this lane, and they're going to have to play around whether that is available quite a lot. As LiivSANDBOX is going to start off the Drake, and it looks like there isn't going to be a response over the side of Gen.G.
Fate just has ultimate control here, is able to verify that Young-Jae is nowhere nearby. And Young-Jae, you know, Olaf in the past has always been one of the champions you feel like if you have Prio in a lane, you could start the Drake, but because Gen.G's draft doesn't allow that, he can't do anything. It's actually just Croco gets this for free with that extra pick on the bottom side of the map. So LiivSANDBOX have control over everything right now. There's not a single thing that's going well for Gen.G at this early state of the game, and that's worrying.
Yeah, I mean, Young-Jae's ahead by a couple of camps. There we go.
And he is playing a very long con game up here.
Yeah.
Fate has teleport though, so this could end up going badly. Let's see if the bait works out.
Yeah, Rascal going to start off the fight here as immediately Summit's actually going to get that Ignite down. Young-Jae moves on past, but Summit's still at full health. That's another solo kill in the works, but the flash out does come through. Some more snipping as there's the Realm Warp. The teleport will come forward as now immediately Croco will dive on top of Young-Jae. That is going to be a one-man shockwave as over goes Young-Jae yet again as Effort will turn up late to this fight. Another Undertow's going to connect as Effort going to come through. That's one kill for the Nautilus. Gets another stun as BDD is 100% dead unless the flash does come through, and it does. Fate not going to be able to follow as his flash he deemed a little bit too valuable.
BDD a little bit nervous. He's like, it is Effort after all.
Yeah, exactly.
I should probably not stand here. But yeah, this ends up being just barely a pretty good trade for LiivSANDBOX at the end of the day. It looked like it was going to be extremely one-sided for Gen.G, but you know, this is the power of Olaf. He has a lot of staying power in these early exchanges. He's just so tanky. He has a lot of health just based on his stats. And Summit actually just really takes the bait here. Like, he's like, okay, I got this. Like, what are you even doing? He goes all in on the fight. Then Young-Jae comes over. Realm Warp, unfortunately, a little bit too late here. But he wanted to wait for Croco so they could both come over. Ends up being a trade back here, and kind of crazy that they just did not expect Effort to be here.
Effort's like giga value as well. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, the roots are so huge.
So much damage.
There's so much CC here. Like, even the slow, BDD just barely gets out, has to flash, which is pretty significant for the mid lane. That's something that he's not going to have next time Croco decides to show up. So this is pretty fantastic for LiivSANDBOX. I think the situation was almost amazing for Gen.G, but because of Effort, it's absolutely a trade.
Yep, I'm hoping that if LiivSANDBOX do manage to win this game, that that is going to be enough to get effort towards 600 points. We do need to have some more support representation at the top of the POG standings, and that rotation really did save LiivSANDBOX's tempo, as he is once again hanging out here in the mid lane, looking to get this rotation over toward the Herald.
Now, I really like this Herald start for Gen.G. This is way smarter than the last one. They know that Prince is on the bottom side of the map. They have a numbers advantage here. They have so much poke.
Looks like SANDBOX still want to try and come through and potentially fight for this. This is really risky as Ruler keeps himself out of vision. Does have the ultimate available, as that's a great engage onto Croco, but he does have the ultimate available. Rascal gets a lot of value with the Q, as it is Shelly getting involved as well. 3 members of LiivSANDBOX trying to run away right now. Chains of Corruption are on cooldown, but it looks like LiivSANDBOX will realize that 4 versus 5 wasn't going to get it for them, and Young-Jae will pick up the Herald.
I feel like this is one thing that I've noticed, and I think everybody's kind of zooming in on right now with the LCK, is we see a lot of games kind of tossed into the bin early on in these Rift Herald fights. I don't want to go as far as to say this game is over because of this one, but the last game kind of was, right? Where Gen.G miscalculated their ability to team fight there. And this time the same situation happens for LiivSANDBOX, where the Rift Herald is so powerful in terms of snowballing your gold lead in this meta, where we've talked about how powerful snowballing is, that you feel compelled to fight even down a player, and you're hoping the Rift Herald is kind of your 5th player in this scenario because it's done a little bit of damage, wasted some cooldowns. But we're seeing a lot of LCK teams just force the issue and fall behind because of it. Like, Gen.G take a huge lead from this because the Rift Herald alone is going to be massive for them, but getting that extra kill, you know, wasting all that time for LiivSANDBOX in the Death Chambers, that's a big swing here for Gen.G, where they were starting to really fall behind. And all it takes is a big group up here, and then LiivSANDBOX just misjudging. They have a comp that can skirmish and fight extremely well, but look at Young-Jae in this fight. He's like, no, I have Ragnarok, and I can be where I want.
Runs past and kills whoever he wants to, but Ruler as well, untouched in the backline. The value of these piercing arrows was very, very high.
Yeah, that was, you know, that's the #1 ball carrier, right? You're going to want is Orianna.
Yeah.
Puts that ball exactly where he wants it to be, too. Really unfortunate the LiivSANDBOX just couldn't cut their losses there because they could have left Prince to farm. You know, it's an unfortunate scenario, but at least you get a little bit out of it there. Not going to be the case.
Well, Prince, for the fact that he wasn't there in that last fight, does have a decent CS advantage, as you can see. And it looks like this Ocean Drake should now be claimed by LiivSANDBOX. They have a lot of control here on the bottom side of the map. So it's going to be their consolation prize. Gen.G going to collect his red buff. And now LiivSANDBOX will just get their collapse going on. Summit does have teleport at the ready, as does Rascal. So there could be a fight opportunity here, as Prince is now going to get that rotation up.
Yeah, Ruler down a level here. Don't want to be tussling with that Ballista through the brush. Ooh, the flank teleport.
Yeah, immediately Ragnarok used early teleport to come forward here as Summit. Trying to escape from this one. Doesn't have flash, remember. Wants to get that dash back available as the needlework is just insane. Okay, Summit is very, very close to living here, but actually avoids a Ruler in a bit of trouble. This leeching Leer is just nutty, as the last auto will be enough to do it, but just some Gwen things occurring here on the map.
It's crazy. When she has that item, she is just so insanely survivable. And it's like,
nuts.
I mean, this should not be happening. This is a champion that can also side lane extremely well. It's basically an assassin, but also a tank. It's just nuts what she's able to accomplish. And yes, she dies for this, but she's able to give LiivSANDBOX a true 2 Drake advantage, which is massive because the next one, of course, ends up being a soul point for them. There's going to be a Cloud Soul, so not as impactful this game. No rumbles in the building this time around.
No, not this time.
But it's crazy what he can do just by teleport flanking like that. And if Gen.G don't all turn on him, then not only do they get the Drake, but actually Gen.G loses players. So they had to respect that Gwen. They did. She's down 2 kills here, but ends up being significantly, significant Drake advantage as a result. Like, you teleport in here, and Olaf had to Ragnarok early, so you're like, okay, well, we're going to try to collapse on the Summit. There's no way we're taking this Drake. And Summit buys just so much time here. He almost trades back a kill.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
This
Ruler
side
misses
step was just crazy.
It's just actually nuts.
So good. But it does mean that the Drake, like you say, goes over in trade for the Gwen's life. In the early game, actually going to be just fine for Gen.G, who are trying to get themselves, in a better position, and right now they do have a slight advantage. But when you have this Olaf Renekton style of composition, the early game is where you want to be excelling, and they are going to start doing that in those 2 positions, right, as we can already see.
And just like last game, as you mentioned, the fact that Ruler's a little bit behind here isn't the end of the world. Like, if you're going to have one spot where LiivSANDBOX is kind of crushing it, you expect that to be the Kalista matchup, right, in the bottom lane, where she has so much control, she got an early kill. Like, a lot of that gold is just straight up in that first kill. And now you're looking at a game where, as Gen.G, your Renekton is kind of fed. And so that's exactly where you want to be to try to turn things around before he really starts falling off in the later part of the game.
Yeah. And of course, does have his Gore Drinker available. Summit doesn't have his Riftmaker just yet. And so he's going to be having a good time in the lane as well, as he is going to waddle his way back up there. Gwen's going to go home. I think it should be at least the steel caps complete, and he does have at least those, but we're still a while away from that first Mythic.
Yeah, he's had a rough time. Down in CS, dead twice. Only gets 1 assist in that exchange earlier on. So not going to be the most amazing performance here from Summit. Not going to be the carry laning phase we saw from him on Viego.
Yep.
But he'll eventually come online, and you could see what even without that Riftmaker, he can do.
What are we ready to fight for here? Gen.G is effort.
Yeah.
Moves on over, and okay, is just going to be the reset. Does walk over a ward, but Gen.G on vision, so effort is going to be fine for the moment. The reason I was questioning that was because we were still over 2 minutes away from the next Drake, so it wasn't too much of a need to head into the river.
Yeah, unfortunately, Gen.G loses a lot of just having those. Like, if he was just clearing camps instead there, then he's a lot more free to look for potentially a gank onto someone on the top side of the map. But, yep, I think they were trying to maybe punish effort there. Hard to say, but losing a little bit of time.
And also, the Rift Herald really didn't do a whole lot,
no,
as we could see. A couple of plates in that mid lane, but I don't even know whether that was even where Shelly went. So, perplexing. Maybe I'm just having a brain fade, but I don't quite remember where she went down.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure either. I think you're right, though. I think the mid lane was where she was dropped down. As Ruler just can't farm. This is how it goes sometimes. There's so many resources for the second Herald, and LiivSANDBOX are just going to go, well, we're not going to make the same mistake twice. Let's actually try to get massive value elsewhere on the map instead of fighting for an objective that's going to be worse than the first one we messed up.
Yep, Croco moving on in here. Looking for a Crocodile, but There are a lot of members of Gen.G there towards the top side, and now Ruler, I mean, he can't approach this wave either, as LiivSANDBOX just say, well, I mean, these inner turrets are worth a little bit more, so he may as well try and take this one down as well. It's below half health already, and Gen.G only now send BDD over. He collects his Ludens and will now try and help defend this, but I just think he's too late.
I mean, this is a lot of extra gold, and Fate's going to go over here and... Oh, I thought he was going to be able to pick up some of that. Actually does, and they're going to realm more.
Oh, poor effort.
And this is where it's going to be traded, right? But again, this is a better trade for LiivSANDBOX unless Gen.G can force the second turret down. Now I think they're going to look for the second charge to get at least that, but
that was good pressure from BDD, being able to at least grab the extra charge.
Yeah. Still, you know, it feels like LiivSANDBOX have really actually caught up quite a bit after some poor exchanges for them on this map. Gen.G's only up 1 kill. They're down 2 Drakes. They're losing out on the gold on the map. You can see LiivSANDBOX just a little bit ahead in that regard. But the arguments to be had for the late game team fights is still there for the 5v5s. You know, this Varus is eventually going to get very scary later on. He's not really on world record pace right now, unfortunately, against the Callistas. Here we go, looking for a fight.
Yeah, got some vision down, and LiivSANDBOX decides that they just don't want to walk in there.
Fate has teleport.
Sense.
Yeah. So I think that Gen.G are kind of hard-pressed to look for an advantage on this Drake fight, to be honest. BDD does not have teleport, at least he's nearby, but LiivSANDBOX can kind of play this one out slow.
Yep, Young-J able to move himself down here. Croco in position. The Rise is picking up the wave, though. It's Prince and Effort. They can get in there. Of course, Effort can be pretty aggressive with Fate's Call now available.
There's not a great teleport ward except the one that's very far left here, so they're just going to walk in instead, Summit and Fate.
Yeah. And Rascal, great position, as it's probably going to be a 50-50 as Prince Gwen Splash gets himself out of there. There's the Fate's Call as the Gwens dove on in. Croco trying to get into position, has to smite early, but he is going to be taken down by Young-J. He gets himself the smite as the Shockwave lands onto one. His Effort does have that stopwatch. They do take down the Olaf, but Gen.G denies Soul Point.
Yeah, we're going to see the Rise teleport top here to push this wave with the extra man advantage they have on the map right now. So this is going to be more than just a kill advantage here on the side of LiivSANDBOX, so I suppose it was traded even. But they're going to be able to get a lot of gold on that top side of the map. And what Gen.G lose here is, once again, or what they gain, rather, is not really a huge win because it's just one Cloud Drake solo. But they're able to prevent that Soul Point, which is pretty significant. But my biggest concern here is how that fight went for Gen.G, because it was not really clean at all. LiivSANDBOX picking off life early on. Rascal is waiting for the long con play here on the side. But look at Prince's positioning. He's got the Fates call out, and then he's just able to come over here and get this Rend off. It's really beautifully played for LiivSANDBOX at the end. And yes, Croco does really force the issue to try to get that smite off. Not successful. It's stolen here by Rascal. But at the end of the day, I'm worried about Gen.G's team fighting here. Like, this is a bit of a concern. Like, it doesn't look like they're all on the same page in terms of target selection and setting up those combos.
Yeah, it was a little bit awkward, to say the least. As I did, like you mentioned, Prince's positioning just fantastic. Moves over, denies Rascal that easy flank angle, gives Fate an ability to get back to the team, and then LiivSANDBOX can fight it out the way that they want to by just piling in on top of Gen.G. Was very good of Young-J to be able to actually collect the Drake, though, so that is certainly good news, and by no means are Gen.G out of this. It's just that LiivSANDBOX, they've just had their finger on the pulse when it comes to the macro rotations so far this series. Just a little bit better than Gen.G.
Look, they get this turret because Fate made the call to teleport instantly after that fight, going right to the top side of the map. He and Summit saved their teleports and walked into the fight, so he got to keep that. He's getting so much extra gold in the side lane, and whenever a Rise gets away with getting all this extra gold in the side lane, gets a turret, gets way more waves than he should be able to, especially when you're running like a Renekton comp. Maybe you're hoping you could punish this, but they're not able to, and Fate's just getting so much extra money. When we looked at BDD's Rise last game, he was under so much pressure dealing with the Viego and the Irelia. He couldn't sign lane. He couldn't get that gold. Whereas Fate, yeah, 2-0 and 2, now has his Zhonya's online. He is going to be a menace in these upcoming objective fights.
Yeah, and Prince has hit his spike well and truly now as well, heading towards the Rage Blade, but already has the Runans and the Shield Bow complete. So this Callista's in a great position. You saw Fate just put together his Zhonya's as well.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very difficult to lock this Rise down.
Uh-oh, they're looking for...
is already there. As, yeah, this is a very, very large flank angle as Prince is going to come through. They don't find the knock-up, or at least the first one, onto the Croc, but he's still very dead. Prince is going to grab that kill as well.
Effort's like, oh, you guys made me use my ult? Okay.
No
over
realm warp
here
to get back this time, though, so it does mean that Gen.G will get this inner turret.
Yeah, that's actually pretty massive. They are not able to punish this. Gen.G are just able to kind of get the best of a bad situation with this rotation, but it's just one step ahead in the macro game as LiivSANDBOX right now. And it's so puzzling to see this against Gen.G, the team that has been the most consistent in the LCK, especially at macro, especially at judging objectives. It's not the case here in this game.
Yeah.
This is also a scenario where I don't think Gen.G should look to engage.
No, they were sort of lying in wait, looking for a potential opportunity. But not going to go for anything as the Baron has just spawned. LiivSANDBOX don't want to give Gen.G any ability to head over and try and sneak it or anything like that. Don't know about their Baron damage at this point in time, though.
It's
that Rift Scholar did not survive for very long.
No. I mean, it's Prince on a very, very decently fed. I mean, I don't even want to say decently, extremely fed.
Yes, he's massive.
Callista. And so you do have to respect the clear time of the Baron for LiivSANDBOX as Gen.G. So removing that vision is just so terrifying for Gen.G. Like, oh no, we don't have those wards anymore. We don't have any control over this pit. So we just really need to spend a lot of time. And getting that scuttle is quite massive. There's a lot of time hovering around the Baron pit just in case they do decide to take that risky, greedy choice. And we just saw Summit back. He got a ton of extra laning done on the side. He's actually almost caught up now with the Renekton. He's just 20 behind in the CS. I mean, this is a 0-3 and 5 Gwen, but is going to be very much more impactful than a Renekton will if we go to those later parts of the game here.
Yeah, we'll see whether actually Summit can spend some time in a side lane and catch back up, because as you can see, 2,000 gold behind is a big deal. A little bit more of a big deal on the bottom side, though. As you can see, Prince 2.5k. That is no slouch. This Callista is huge, like we mentioned before.
And Ruler just hasn't been able to have that impact in the setup for a team fight that Avaris will often like to have, you know, where you slowly chip away and then you set up for the engage. He just hasn't been able to do that because these fights have been so skirmishy, and LiivSANDBOX have just looked for picks so often.
They've been a little bit more proactive, actually, right?
Yeah.
Like, they haven't let the Varus sit around and poke, but I think Gen.G really wants to do that, right? As now another fight is going to break out, another very early Ragnarok. As Summit doesn't have the mist available. He's going to be in that Dragon Pit, but it looks like LiivSANDBOX will be able to back away. Piercing Arrow just not quite doing the damage that you expect from this Varus.
This is such a hard fight for Gen.G to engage in on without, you know, any sort of really awesome ultimate to set this up. I mean, the Shockwave, this positioning is good.
That is going to be stolen by Ruler of all people.
Wow.
There's going to be the Shockwave as in goes the Rakan as well. Great knock up from Effort, though, as immediately the Crocodile's in trouble, but the Gore Drinker is just disgusting. Prince trying to kite this one out, but it's just not going to be enough, and that is a huge fight for Gen.G.
Massive.
And they turn this whole game on its head.
Oh, they absolutely do. This is a real moment for Gen.G to absolutely take control over everything, because now they could take this lead and then go straight to the Baron pit and clean this up. And even though Youngjae Ragnaroked early in that fight, they were able to just win that war of attrition because Renekton is so fed. The Gore Drinker value you mentioned is huge here.
He went to full health. That was absurd.
It was actually crazy. No matter how many times you nerf this item, nerf the healing on the Renekton too, it's just like, well, he's going to be totally fine. As you watch this too, like, the positioning of Ruler is kind of awkward. Like, he's caught between a rock and a hard place in terms of doing damage. Steals away the Drake, though. And then at this moment, LiivSANDBOX is like, oh, I want to cancel the fight. I would like to cancel my reservation on this Drake. But it's a little bit too late. And you can see, there's just, the front line is so massive for Gen.G that Ruler just does free damage the entire time. Like, you have an Olaf and a fed Renekton. How do you break through?
Won that whole fight by himself.
Yep,
that was absurd. It reminds me of his Lee Sin last week, you know? Just came in. It's like Gore Drinkers. Like, you give Rascal a Gore Drinker, it does more than if you give it to other players.
And
apparently.
Now you have a Varus that's starting to come online. You know, it does have his first 2 items online and it's working towards his 3rd. And you could see that when Gen.G do have the opportunity to close in and look for a front-to-back team fight, their comp does very well. And it's been kind of skirmishy, and it has been more proactive play, like you mentioned, for LiivSANDBOX, that have prevented Gen.G from taking a fair 5v5 fight. They're just unable to do that most of the game, but then finally they pull it off, and that's what's starting to look scary. You know, the last few fights for them where we had the group ups, it didn't look clean for Gen.G, but that one absolutely did.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful. Just going to need to see more of it. As the lead, not exactly insurmountable or anything, but you can see the Baron power play is ticking up over and over again. 2.3k right now, but that is only going to get further and further as these piercing arrows really starting to land.
Stopwatch advantage is pretty big for LiivSANDBOX, so they have a lot of power to hard engage, but they need to be ready to do so. Fate does have teleport here. You could look for a big fight here right now if you're ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah, flanking ward's not really there as Summit puts down the mist. Gen.G trying to get in there, but it looks like it is just going to be Gen.G locking down this turret. They get the stopwatch out of Summit as well, who's now just going to get popped. Rascal dives on top of him and says thank you very much for that one. Croco taking a lot of damage there from the piercing arrow, and Gen.G are not done yet. They're going to take down this inhibitor turret. The inhibitor will be taken as well.
It might look to, I mean, if anybody tries to defend this and they die, like that could be game winning here, even though we're only 25 minutes in.
Well, that's a big flash in from Effort, but hits a minion with the hook. And these piercing arrows on the fallback. Feels like LiivSANDBOX have kind of, the use-by date is a problem, as there's the ulti from Prince.
It's not enough
to get him out of the shockwave. It's going to be all right. However, that is a lot of buttons now unavailable. And this inhibitor turret's also dead. Inhibitor to follow as well in the mid lane. And there's an outer turret top lane. That is so much, even more money to be thrown over to Gen.G.
It's massive here for them. They get such a huge lead from this. They're now suddenly exploding into a 6,000 gold lead here. So much money goes over to them, and their composition is well and truly working as intended. They have an insane front line, and you're seeing LiivSANDBOX just really struggle to actually win these longer 5v5 fights or really commit to flanking right now. Well, you mentioned the lack of teleport wards for a flank to come through from Fate. He was ready for it. He was kind of off in the lane. He had hidden his position while he was doing Krugs, and if there was a teleport ward, maybe they could collapse in. They end up losing the Zhonyas early in the fight for Summit. Effort goes down. They keep the stopwatches for Croco and Prince, but I don't know, it might just be too far gone at this point, Atlas, for LiivSANDBOX to come back and win a straight-up fight.
Really feels like I mean, they have no counter siege as well, right? It's really, really difficult for LiivSANDBOX to fight against Baron.
Really nice change there, you know, from Rascal, or from Ruler, excuse me. And that's, you know, what causes a really big snowball. As the Fate's call.
Oh,
wow, too bad.
Oh, wow, he died in the Callista.
Yep, got burned down.
Right, okay. Well, I apologize for missing that one. That's very, very odd. Thought that he wasn't targetable at that stage, but look, maybe if you're Ruler, different rules apply.
Yep, he basically said Gabi, which is essentially the word for unlucky, you know, if you want to put it in you know, Twitch chat words, or, you know, what people type in all chat.
Yeah.
It was definitely not a worth moment.
No, as Summit not going to get knocked up here by Life, but yeah, I don't know where things get better for LiivSANDBOX. Certainly looking fantastic for Gen.G.
I mean,
Gen.G, they lose the Baron buff now, so
they have two inhibitors they were able to get grouped up as 5, and they don't even have to play a side lane game now. They could just group and push down the remaining inhibitor lane, the top lane, grab all that extra gold, and they could just basically say, we'll do this until the Baron spawns and we'll look for that. The Cloud Drake is their third, but they don't really care about it that much. They'd rather just push this advantage in lanes right now than get a somewhat worthless Drake.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. As Summit, yeah, the miss not quite there in time, so he loses half of his health bar. It's bad news. Gets some needlework onto Ruler though, so that's certainly good, as the Shockwave going to be avoided by the Fate's Call. This time, the Nautilus survives the process of Fate's Calling, which gonna have to keep my eye on.
And it's just non-stop pressure here, grouped up as 5. And LiivSANDBOX can't win a 5v5 team fight right now. And Gen.G are just trying to choke them out of the game. Oh, this is optimistic.
Yeah, this is a bit scary, as immediately Effort is going to pop, but are they actually able to get this fight working out, as Croco diving on forward gets a lot of value, as Rascal might fall down, but Fate's going to get flashed on by Gen.G. It's a triple kill for BDD, but can Prince do better than that, is the question, as he's got the vision. BDD's super dead, as I don't know whether he has the rend. He doesn't quite just yet. There it is. Comes through for the double on the spot. That's an ace. And LiivSANDBOX undone yet.
Oh, what a massive play here at the end of the day. In these awkward situations, that's when Twist is going to get so much value.
Oh my
He's the last person you want to deal with. Also, I mean, we'll probably get a replay look at this in the moment, but Rascal went so deep and was caught under turret for a really long time in that fight without doing anything to anyone. And so, yeah, this is a really nice moment here for Gen.G. It looks like, okay, we just win this fight and we win the game. Okay, they're actually soloing the Baron too for a moment. But look at Rascal here in this moment where he goes on to Fate, and then Prince locks him up here with the root coming down, and he just dies. And that's the end of any sort of front line. You can't get on top of Prince after this. And everybody's taken so much turret damage with no minions here. And the Prince is like, I'm Callista versus an Olaf that can't close the gap on me. And BDD, look at the amount of spears that BDD is wearing.
Yeah. Oh, man. And now they managed to get themselves the Baron. So we've turned it all around. LiivSANDBOX on the back of their extraordinarily fed Callista, who is 10 CS away from a Flame Horizon over ruler. And if that's not insane, I don't know what is. I mean, we haven't seen that.
Fate, we talked about it too. He's been given so much room to farm. He actually has the most experience in the game. He's been doing so much side laning, got a ton of extra gold from the turret. He's starting to get those items online. So, I mean, now you're really, all your advantages as Gen.G are mostly in grouping up and looking for those big 5v5 team fights and actually getting those picks earlier, but it becomes so much more difficult now. The broken stopwatch on Croco is pretty massive. That's something they did lose in that last exchange, but Zonius is up for Fate, right? Summit's got his own. It's a lot more difficult to win those fights early in the big burst exchanges as Gen.G now.
Yeah, and they also now have at least an Oblivion Orb as well on Fate, so these Gore Drinkers are going to be subdued somewhat, but I think I'd like a little bit more heal deny to come through from LiivSANDBOX. We'll see whether that is actually going to be invested in, as 3 Cloud Souls now, ultimates aplenty here for Gen.G, as LiivSANDBOX looking to try and get themselves in and get themselves some vision, as here's the rotation over. Croco has to ult, gets in on top of Rascal now as the Fate's call comes through, but Rascal avoids it. There's Ragnarok also on cooldown, so a bit of a trade, but works out quite nicely for Gen.G.
Yeah, Gen.G
are very happy. Will be able to clear out this wave.
Gen.G should be very happy. Listen, Prince is just going to be greedy and push this mid wave because there's nobody there, but he's going to have to run back because this is once again Gen.G's MO.
This is where all their money is.
Yeah.
All their money is in the mid lane right now. LiivSANDBOX cannot fight this and defend, as it could just be like so many inhibitors. But it looks like they are going to be able to save it, as yes, Summit late on the mist.
They saved the inhibitor. This is massive. Yeah. And now they have both of their other inhibitors respawn, so they actually are 3 inhibitors up here, which means Gen.G can't just as easily group top as 5 and let the minions do the rest of the macro pushing. You know, it's not a 5-1-1 anymore where you can just group as 5 and then the minions do the work on the macro. So we're looking at this Baron buff fading away for LiivSANDBOX. They used it fairly well defensively here. Prince got that mid turret. They're going to try to push this one down as well. It's pretty low. I don't think he can actually force the issue, though. And we go back to another game where it's any team could win this. Like, it's very much an anything goes game. It's all about one 5v5 team fight. You get a successful wipe, and that's all it takes. And the Renekton's expiration date starts to kind of glare at you a little bit here in this game because, yes, he can set up really nice engages. He has a stopwatch, but his longevity isn't there because before he was so fed and so tanky and the Gore Drinker value was so massive that unfortunately for Prince and Fate, they're just not able to do anything. They have to either be so far away they can't do damage in the fight, or they die because they're actually in position to do so, and Renekton gets on top of them. Now they can burst the Renekton down. Now Rascal is not going to be immortal in these upcoming fights anymore.
I mean, Prince, yeah, he's got a fair bit of damage on him, this guy. He's got 6 items now completed, just put his Bloodthirster together, and so yeah, he's the real deal.
He really is.
Yeah, Fate as well, like you were talking about earlier. He just put his Void Staff together also, and so just needs that Morellonomicon to complete the Rise build.
Unfortunately, Croco is not really a champion in this game.
Yeah, having a bit of a rough one.
He is having a tough time, but he is just enough of a frontline to challenge Rascal. I think that burst damage can come through from Prince and Fate. And he could just press the buttons, the Xin Zhao buttons, right? Like, he can go ahead and put his Crescent Guard out if he wants to isolate someone, and then that target gets blown up. Even though he's, you know, like I said, he's jokingly, he's not a champion, he doesn't do big damage, he's not in a great state, he has the most critical items that Xin Zhao needs to actually do the bare minimum to set up for Fate and Prince. On the other side of things for Gen.G, like, Ruler needs a lot of time to actually do consistent damage, whereas Prince is going to do it fast. It's going to be in your face.
All right, so this is going to be about, can Gen.G's top jungle kill the Callista? Because the Callista has so much of LiivSANDBOX's money, and they're now only behind 2,000. This, if LiivSANDBOX managed to win this game, I'm going to be very, very impressed because they fell so far behind after that first Baron. Gen.G used it expertly, but then unfortunately, that play with the Fates, with the Realm Warp,
yeah,
Just a little bit too much for Gen.G to handle. Maybe a slide over extension, but
it's crazy too that last time this happened between these two teams, you know, Gen.G was the one who actually had the crazy comeback win, but this time it's looking like LiivSANDBOX are really going to turn the narrative on its head. This Drake is like one of the least significant things in this game, sadly. I don't know if LiivSANDBOX are really even that excited about getting Soul Point right now. The Baron is way more important. I think actually just controlling the vision here is absolutely where you want to put your money right now as LiivSANDBOX, unless they're able to just rush this down super quick.
Yeah, I think that if you're LiivSANDBOX, you want to take the Drake off the map and then set up around that Baron so that you don't just lose Soul, right?
The timing.
Because a quad Cloud Soul could mean double Shockwave in a team fight, which that's not exactly what you want. As Croco going to get engaged on here by Young.G just a little bit. Fate comes on over, and he has a lot of damage potential, we have to remember.
Gen.G really want to force this instead of trading and just going back to the Baron. They want to make this fight theirs. They want to end this game right now. This fight will likely decide the game. Oh, look at Croco's flank angle here. This could be massive.
Yeah, you can see Prince looking for that Rend for the secure as now Rascal goes golden. Young.G taking a lot of damage here as well as Rascal has to flash. Chains of Corruption into the backline as the Drake is going to be taken here by LiivSANDBOX. But can they actually win the fight is the question. Summit going down extraordinarily low and the Zinzal's also dead. BDD with a double kill for now as Prince.
1v9 Prince.
Yeah, Fate realm warps himself to relative safety and now we're looking to potentially base race or something.
Yeah, that's the idea here. I think Gen.G are going to win that race though. They have the massive numbers advantage and that's going to be a retreat here from LiivSANDBOX. I think LiivSANDBOX were hoping that Gen.G rushed to Baron here instead, and they think that, you know, it's going to be defending coming back. Ooh, I don't know about this.
I think taking double inhibitor and then taking the Baron is the safe play, but Gen.G reading the death timers are thinking that they might be able to get this one done. Prince is very, very strong, but is he strong enough is the question. As now Rascal underneath Nexus turrets does have to contend with this mega fed Kalista who goes down to the GA. Now effort coming on in here is okay, Prince just gonna get popped. The shockwave timing, absolutely beautiful. As Croco, it's his turn to celebrate by going directly back to the death chamber. That was a roller coaster, but in the end, Gen.G managed